Good evening and welcome to the CUNY Academy, where we are building responsible voters one video at a time. This is first video of term 2, and we're going to talk a little Title IX in preparation for tomorrow's debate. And I'm actually recording this with U.S. history in mind as well, because U.S. history is going to watch this in December when we learn about Title IX in the context of the Civil Rights Movement. All right. So in our debate, I'm sure we're inevitably going to address the question about Mundelein sports, since that's what makes this topic relevant to you. So how would you perceive the difference in men and women's sports programs here at Mundelein High School? Okay, is it a major advantage for men's sports, slight advantage for men's sports? Do you feel they're treated equally? Is there a slight advantage for women's sports or a major advantage for women's sports? We'll see how that comes out in tomorrow's debate. All right, so Title IX has been pushed for by various women's groups, including NOW, which is a interest group, National Organization of Women. So we talk about the role of interest groups often, and they were the main proponents of this. And their goal is basically to try and get equality in education. All right, so in 1971, there were 29,000 women that played college sports with 170,000 men. Clearly a big discrepancy in participation. And in college, as we know, we're obviously playing the sport for our university. We want to help our college out, but more importantly, that's giving you greater educational opportunities, which leads to better paying jobs and so on. So this was a means to an end, if you will. All right. So the intent of Title IX is to eliminate discrimination in public education funding between male and female students. All right. Now there are very few programs that are differentiated between men and women other than sports. So it really applies to sports, even though the real intent was just to have equal funding in education. Okay, so athletics was most directly affected. It's called Title IX because it's one of the 13 amendments to the Civil Rights Act of 1964. All right, that is the most important piece of civil rights legislation you need to know. You also need to know that the Civil Rights Act of 1964 was amended to include gender, as far as banning discrimination in employment and other areas of public accommodations. All right, some other female pieces of legislation you'll need to know is the Equal Pay Act of 1963, okay, which obviously basically said that if you're doing a job of comparable worth, men and women should be paid equally. And then Civil Rights Act of 64 says you cannot discriminate in employment, and if you do, the federal government can investigate and prosecute. And Title IX being the other piece. Okay, so great free response question would allow you to talk about how each of these help prevent gender discrimination. All right, so here is the wording there. No person in the U.S. on the basis of sex shall be excluded from participation in, be denied the benefits of, or subjected to discrimination under any federal education program or activity receiving federal financial assistance. And that's the key, federal financial assistance. This is where Congress is using its power of, sorry, I didn't use the best color there, its power of the purse, okay, to ensure that anything getting federal funds is treated equally. If you do not comply, you don't get your money. All right, so if a school receives federal funds, which we do, it must comply with Title IX. Okay, this law applies to anybody getting federal funds, so it's not a necessary and proper clause, it's not the Commerce Clause, it's the power to tax and spend clause that allows this. All right, so the results of this program, there's been a 460% increase in women participants in athletics and 800% increase in high school sports. All right, if you look in the 1960s yearbooks for Mundelein High School, and you can do that up in the library, there are 0 female sports teams. All right, and that is because sports was kind of considered unladylike. It was not something for women to do, and the money was not directed toward that. There were a lot less male programs as well, but obviously there were no female sports whatsoever. So a huge increase makes a big difference. All right. By 1973, after it was implemented, Illinois hosted its first 3 state girls tournaments. Bowling, track, and tennis were your first female sports. So some of you athletes out there, the J.R. Ewings and you're going to hear me, Laura's of the world, would be very happy. I don't think we have any bowlers in class. But those were your first sports. There was actually archery was a sport for a long time, and that was to help comply with Title IX. So there were just girl sports to equate to boy sports. So we had an archery team. At my high school, I don't know if we had one at Mundelein or not. All right, so what does compliance mean? This is probably the most important thing you'll need to know about Title IX here, okay? To comply with it, one of these 3 things must be dealt with, one out of the 3, okay, to be considered compliant. A school must have the same percentage of varsity athletes as women in the undergraduate student body. So if I have a college and only 40% of my student body is female, then 40% of my athletes should be female. So it's got to be equal percentages. Not sure the breakdown here at Mundelein. Number two, the school has to show a history of continuing practice of expanding opportunities for women athletes. So anytime you add a new program, that is complying with Title IX because you are expanding opportunities, giving women more chances to play, more chances to participate. Okay, when we created the girls golf team 6 or 7 years ago, that was great for Title IX because it was one more opportunity for women athletes. And then number three, the school has to demonstrate that it fully and effectively is meeting the interest of women on its campus. So you cannot go to Mundelein and say, you're not complying with Title IX, we don't have a girls hockey team. All right? We actually had a meeting for a girls hockey team about 5 years ago, and a whopping 2 people showed up. Very hard to play a hockey season with 2 players. So we met the needs of the women on campus because they did not want a hockey team. Now, if 50 girls went and said they wanted a badminton team, they would have to do that. Don't get any ideas, however. All right, so questions to consider for our debate tomorrow, or this morning, depending on when you're watching this. Has Title IX helped women? If so, how? Does it discriminate against male athletes? If so, how? And should it be kept, revised, or eliminated? And you've read a number of articles on that topic. Okay? So if we were voting, would be the question we would be addressing. Okay? And the criticism of it, you'll probably see this in some of the articles that you read, and this cartoon kind of illustrates it here, is a lot of male sports are being discontinued because the colleges have to keep things equal. The big number that they measure in college is scholarships. Okay, if a college offers 200 scholarships for male athletes, there has to be 200 for female athletes. Okay, well, the problem, and you can see college football up here on the top of the cartoon. Most Division I college football programs like University of Illinois and Northern Illinois have 85 scholarship athletes. There's no girls football team, so there has to be 85 girls scholarships to equal out to those 85 football scholarships. So schools like Wisconsin cut their baseball program because they have hockey. They have men's and women's hockey, but they cut their baseball program because they needed to have a women's equivalent to that. Okay, same thing. A lot of schools will have rowing or crew teams, field hockey teams, women's lacrosse teams. Those are all big in college because those are sports that girls can play to offset the number of football scholarships that are out there. Okay, wrestling has been discontinued at a lot of schools. Kid I went to high school, state champion gymnast, went to a college, and that college canceled its gymnastics program while he was there because they had to comply with Title IX. Okay, so there are ways it discriminates against male sports because it has to keep things equal, discontinue some of those, but at the same time it does provide opportunities that you can see before 1971 did not exist. All right, so have a wonderful evening, and we will talk tomorrow in the debate. First hour I will not be there, but third hour I will. All right, thanks for listening to the CUNY Academy, where we are building responsible voters, one video at a time.